Hello everyone, and welcome to our preview of the 2013 legislative session. And joining me is Mike Reed, our Associate Executive Director for Advocacy and our Chief Lobbyist in Jeff City. And Mike, thanks a lot for being with us.
Well, it's going to be an interesting session. I think it's great that we get started and so our members know what's going to happen.
Let's talk about the election, first of all, Mike, and its impact on the General Assembly and the makeup of the General Assembly. What happened there?
The General Assembly, the House now is veto-proof. There are 110 Republican votes in the House. There are 24 Republican votes in the Senate. Both are veto-proof, so if the governor finds something that he doesn't like and vetoes it, if everybody votes on party lines, the veto will be overridden. So it changes the dynamics. Some of the House leadership has said, you know, it's a new day for us. We're going to go and do the programs we want to, and now it's time for the governor to come in and work with the House and the Senate. I certainly hope that there will be a lot of cooperation between the elected state officials and the General Assembly, because stalemate in government is not good.
Mm-hmm. You talked about the veto-proof majority, Mike, but that is assuming that all the legislators on the Republican side would stay in line, which on a veto override attempt, which isn't necessarily true.
Which is not necessarily true, and we have found that on education issues, we have a number of Republicans who vote with us on education issues. So if the governor would veto an education piece, we believe we can keep those votes with us.
Mm-hmm. What about the funding outlook as we head into the session, Mike?
Well, it's good news, bad news. The good news is the economy is growing slightly in the state of Missouri, and our taxes, the tax revenue has increased slightly. That being said, there are a lot of places in government that the money needs to go and has to go. I don't look for any increase in the foundation formula at all. And if there is an increase, I believe it'll be a very slight increase. So I think probably the best we're going to get is flat, perhaps maybe just a very slight increase, but I don't see it being fully funded.
Mm-hmm. What about some of the categorical programs like transportation, early childhood? Any increases there possibly?
I don't look for any increases in either one of those.
Mm-hmm. An issue that we're spending a lot of time on, Mike, and we discussed at our fall regional meetings, is tax credit reform. Getting at that issue is possibly a way to provide some additional revenue that might be available for education and other services. What's the outlook for that?
Well, I think it's a little bit better. The outlook for that is a little bit better. I believe that everybody is coming to the table. All sides of the tax credit issue are coming to the table and now seeing what's best for the people of Missouri. The tax credits have grown, as we have said, exponentially, and they keep growing. And they're taking a larger part of the general revenue because it comes right off the top of the state budget. I think that leadership is now seeing that, and that there will be another push this year to try to rein them in to an extent. So I am cautiously optimistic. I think our program and our members discussing this with their elected officials is helping, and they need to keep on that discussion.
What might be some elements in some legislation regarding tax reform, Mike? Some caps on them possibly?
We could have caps. We could have caps. We could look at sunsetting them. And we could look to make sure that when in the sunset, in the review, that there is some sort of ratio between how much it costs and how much money they are returning to the state in economic development.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned early childhood education earlier, Mike, and that really did suffer some dramatic cuts as far as state support for that last year, but you're saying that the outlook is not all that bright?
I don't think it's all that bright. We will push for more funding for early childhood. As we know, the amount of money that you spend on early childhood comes back in a tenfold increase. It helps tremendously when children are prepared for school and ready to learn. I think that we could have a little success, but I'm not overly optimistic. I think it's going to be a long, hard journey there. We have to prove, again, because we have a number of new legislators, we have to prove what early childhood does, and I think it's very important that we do that. So we'll work very hard, and I'm just not overly optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Another issue that maybe wasn't really on our radar that much, but seems to be gaining some momentum possibly, is increasing the bonding capacity for school districts, which could really help some growing school districts with their facilities needs. Do you sense some momentum there?
We do sense some momentum. We have been working with a couple of groups on the possibility of increasing the bond, the ability to increase bonded indebtedness above the 15%. It's actually an economic tool. The pent-up demand for new construction in education is tremendous in the state of Missouri, and we are kept down by that 15%. So we are working with several groups, including we're discussing with the Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau has in the past been very reluctant to support the increase in the 15%, but they are now looking at this as perhaps something that is good for kids, and that's what it's all about, is what's good for kids. So I look for that we will get at least some discussion on this year. In the past, when we have had this, it has been held hostage for other pieces of legislation. Hopefully this will not happen this year, and we will get it taken care of the other way.
Another issue, Mike, is the public school retirement system and possibly some changes coming to the PSRS. What's the outlook for that?
This year there are some expirations on the 25 and out for the retirement system, and also the 2.55 multiplier with when you have worked more than 31 years. So both of those sunset, and they will be looked on and examined. Public retirement systems throughout the country have been looked at, and ours will be also examined. I think there's a very good chance that they will be readopted. The fact that if they don't be they aren't readopted, we could have a number of people retire, and some of our best older teachers looking at retirement. But this whole situation will have to be examined. PSRS is doing better, but there is still a shortfall, so that will also have to be examined and discussed with the legislature.
Mm-hmm. What about issues that we have traditionally opposed, Mike, like vouchers, tuition tax credits, other efforts designed maybe to funnel public money to private schools? Are we going to see that agenda pushed?
We will see that agenda pushed. That agenda will be pushed very hard. One of the big funders of the Republican Party is Rex Sinquefield, and that is part of his agenda, and we will see that. We will also see the parent trigger bill filed. That's a bill that has been filed the last 2 years by Representative Tim Jones, who's the new speaker, and I'm quite sure he will file it again. That bill says that if a school is not performing adequately, the parents can sign a petition and remove that school from the public school system and change it into a charter school or some other sort of school, and in fact, they could run the school. That has been passed in a couple of states. We will oppose that violently and vigorously, but we will see that piece of legislation out there.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Representative Tim Jones, the new Speaker of the House, and we're going to see new leadership in both the House and Senate.
New leadership in the House and Senate. Tim Jones has come up through the ranks. He's a very bright and articulate young man. He actually, though, is in favor of a lot of parent choice pieces of legislation, and so we will have to argue those a lot. In the Senate, Tom Dempsey is going to be the President Pro Tem, Ronnie Richards the floor leader. I think that we will see a different type of Senate, but it'll be a new dawn over there, and it'll be very interesting to see how those gentlemen work.
Mm-hmm. Another issue I wanted to ask you about, Mike, some might see this as kind of a small issue, but it's really not a small issue to school districts. It has to do with the Sunshine Law and protecting some of our records related to school safety.
Yes, there is a provision in the Sunshine Law dealing with those records that expires at the end of this year, December 31st of 2012. We were unable to get it extended. It was in several pieces of legislation, and it died right at the end. It's a very important piece of legislation that we will put on the fast track right at the start of the year. I would like to see that it could be a consent bill in both houses. We'll see if we can do that. But it is extremely important because all of these plans, disaster plans, and could be open to public inspection, and that's not appropriate. We just can't have that.
Mm-hmm. What should our board members and superintendents be doing right now, Mike, as we approach the session? Meeting with their legislators before the session gets going?
They need to meet with them before the session. They need to bring them in, to have coffee with them, to have them come to a school board meeting. We have, as I said, a number of newly elected officials. They need to come to the school district to see what is going on. We actually are very fortunate. I believe there are at least 10 new reps who have school board experience or teaching experience. That will be very helpful. But those new reps need to go back into the districts to say, this is what's happening, because we need to have that communication, because it's better to know somebody before you need to ask for the help. Mm-hmm. So it's extremely important that they do that now.
And Mike, once again, during the session, we will be scheduling some visits for our members to the Capitol. Tell us about that.
We have our SBAN meetings. They're on Tuesdays, and they will be, we're putting several districts, several regions together as they come down this year. We think that'll be more helpful to everyone. And it's extremely important to come down to visit your state representative and your state senator. Come for an SBAN visit, call them ahead of time, schedule appointments so you can talk to them about what they're doing and how their actions affect you in your school districts. What we're talking about are the children. We always have to remember, how do these pieces of legislation affect the children in our district? We're not talking about raises, we're not talking about anything else, we're talking about the kids. And that's extremely important, and we need to get that message across, because the actions in Jefferson City affect the 900,000 students in the state of Missouri.
And of course, Mike, once again, once the session gets going in early January, we'll be updating our members with our Legislative Voice newsletter, video programs, and critical issue alerts. So our members will be informed about what's going on.
That's exactly right. We have our Friday morning program that we do every Friday morning about what's happening. We have our alerts. We have our newsletter. And also, if anybody has a question, just email me or call, and we'll get back with you and tell you what's happening.
All right. Mike Reed, thanks a lot for being with us and previewing the 2013 legislative session.
Thank you.